Okay, so thank you all for all this really brilliant input about what you think is critical thinking. We talk about Anna was talking about the reading, about we assessing informations, and then we think, and then we be able to have some thoughts. We also talk about how to challenge the orthodox the thinking in our mind, and then put together perhaps some really innovative, challenging thing there. I was talk about talk about how we be able to organizing this pile of information to put them in order to systemize them where communication, where discussion, and Christina also talk about how we use critical thinking to challenge the current knowledge really. So I managed to put like some keywords from what I find. Oh, sorry. Some of the keywords I find through the literatures. So I really find like there are three main sort of thing here when people talk about critical thinking. So it's like what we talk about when we talk about critical thinking. So first is brainstorming. So we have a contributor really talk about that, the discussion and speak up. We've got make use of multiple sources of information. I think that we have the picture about the book. I talk about that, like using library. Now we have internet. We have all sort of information to utilizing for help us to unpack the problem. And then we have the always think why. I think why is really sort of like the key question to facilitate critical thinking. Is sort of sometimes we think that as the start point, also the ending point of critical thinking, right? Okay, so this is a model. I also got it from the learning like critical thinking from Plymouth University. So they put this model about we always have a topic, we have an issue here, and then we just keep asking questions. Okay, so they unpack this as three parts. We got description, and from description they got like what, when, who, where, like have just tell the story, and then to analyze the story, asking why, how, what if not, right? What if it is? What if not? And then it's like, so what? So even if this is how it happens, okay, we know already what's the story about, then so what? And then it's like evaluation, and finally ask like what next? So it's kind of having this exploring, having this problem-oriented thinking behind this idea about critical thinking. However, I wanted you to, I don't know how many of you might speak another language or might have some other thinking about this. So have you ever thought about how you say critical thinking in another language? Because for me personally, I can share with you of my own experience. Critical thinking I'm Chinese, so critical thinking, to say it in Chinese, it doesn't really a very colloquial word. So it's not like something people just say it every day. It's definitely a word coming from the West, but it's not that commonly used in everyday life. But in the meantime, got something in China, and also the same in so the word used in China about critical thinking, it's similar to the word in Japanese. I don't know much about Korean, so I didn't really do much research on that. So it's really something about creational thinking, but it's not critical thinking. So I'm going to share with you it's not really about how to say critical thinking in Chinese, but how to talk about the creational thinking in Chinese. So instead of the word critical thinking, the word in Chinese is opening up your brain hole. I know it sounds really horrifying, like drizzling, but it's not. It's like a very metaphoric phrase, metaphoric expression here. So I put two pictures, which I use the word really, I mean, if we're in a lecture theater, I'd be able to share with you. But now I just Googled that, and then I put the picture. I Googled like open up your brain hole in Chinese, and what I find the picture here, which you can see is quite different from the pictures we shared before about critical thinking. We've discussed 5 minutes earlier. So you can see like this one is almost like the one on the right bottom. It's almost like a mindful, like a meditation format of facilitating one's thought. And on the top one is like how to teach the primary students, like a poster in primary school about critical thinking or the creational thinking. So this is a few points I put here. So I think that's the difference, or if I wanted to, of course, there are so many similarities between the version of Chinese about opening up your brain hole and critical thinking. They all try to think out of the box, obviously. They try to facilitate alternative thinking. They're all trying to imagine the unimaginable, right? To picture something which is not usually we can foresee in the traditional way or in the classical way. So there are some difference points I want to highlight here, saying it's not necessarily, not always involving discussion. I think that's kind of really distinctive difference here. It can be a dialogue with oneself. I put the nirvana here, but just something like a probably that this extreme version of that. And this also, it may not follow a particular process. So in the previous slides, I sort of talk you through about the way critical thinking is through description, analyze, and then evaluation. But this is not, it can be just thinking all the time. I guess there's one thing kind of different from, say, Asian culture comparing to the Western. It's about the idea about thought-provoking, the idea about the linear process of thinking. It's kind of also, in a way, refrained ourselves, restricted ourselves, limited the way we can think, because there's already provided a model. So even though it's a model to facilitate critical thinking, but then it's also restrained one thought, sort of in a way, right? And lastly, it can just be a thought, really. So it's not necessarily involving this process of induction or deduction. It's not even necessarily be logical reasoning. It doesn't really have to be reasoning. And this can be, this is the last point I want to highlight here, it can be purely descriptive and fluid and liquefied. So this is something mostly based on my thinking and my observation. If someone have any idea, feel free to chip in or tell me later. That is really interesting. Okay, so I got one example here. I'm trying to. So I got one example here. So about this this different presentation about this rule about the pentagram theorem, right? I think some of you might familiar with this. So it's like the square of A plus the square of B is equal to square of C. But you can see that the presentation in Chinese is entirely different. It doesn't have reasoning here. It doesn't have it doesn't put it in the formula, which seems like very straightforward, very logical reasoning. It's a pure description, but the reasoning is already behind that. So the presentation here itself already have the evidence processing that, already tell you what it's about, and also it tells how they find this. So you can already see in this example this huge, distinctively difference between the way behind the thought and behind the presentation. Yeah, I'm just going to share some of it. So it's incorporating a dialogue with oneself. It's really including the idea of being willing be wrong and learning new things. Yeah. Thank you. So if I can ask you to do, this was my original plan, is we're going to have a group discussion focused on reasoning, and we will have like an individual task focus on description, and then we will see maybe something will generate different from here. So my sort of like idea here would be imagining there's no law, and just tell you what you think about this. But I think I can still do the task in a way, even though the might be all be individual task, but I think it will be something interesting to try.